So at this point, we have a pretty functioning text adventure game. But if we want to expand this, we're going to run into some problems because we have just a single file for all of our code and all of our data. If we continue to put information about new places and new actions that people can take inside of the game into this file, it's going to become very large. So what we're going to do next is take a look at how to refactor this in a way that makes it scalable, so you can continue to expand on this game without having a giant file. Having one giant file for all of the code and data has two major problems with it. One is that it's going to be harder and harder to navigate the file. And second, anything you do in the script is going to load all of the code, even if you don't need it all on every page load. And if you imagine expanding this text adventure game to include thousands and thousands of places, that's a lot of code to load, and so it's going to take more memory in order to load up an application like that. The other problem with this code is that we use global variables. In previous examples, we saw how this was convenient because we could use one variable and access it in every function without having to redeclare it or pass it in as a parameter. But the problem is that it's easy to forget which variables are global, and you may accidentally overwrite some of those variables in other functions because the default behavior is that variables are local to a function. And so it can be a real challenge to try to track down a problem where you're overwriting a global variable. So let's go ahead and look at the code. I'm going to jump back to the resource pack directory, and in the third folder called Forms and Sessions, what we're going to do is copy the text adventure folder over to our examples folder. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to jump over to the examples folder, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it in. Now let's go ahead and do a quick demonstration to show that the functionality is the same. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the browser, and in the address bar, instead of having test.php, what I'm going to go ahead and do is type in text adventure and press enter. Now you see the screen didn't change at all, and as we type in commands, I'm going to go ahead and go south. You see we have the same output here that we would expect in our other script. Now we've refactored the code in a couple of different ways, and one of the things that we've done is moved the output into an index.php file. You can see after we submitted this form that we landed on text-adventure/index.php. As you begin to work with CMSs and make more complicated web applications, you'll see this index.php or index.html file used a lot. The idea is that Apache, which is the web server that our application is running on right now, will normally serve up an index of files when you navigate to a directory, and it just does that automatically. So if, for example, we removed index.php in this text adventure here from the URL, and we pressed enter, we would see an index that shows all of the files that are inside of our directory. We see our test.php file, we see our text adventure folder, and we see our Drupal directory, which is where we moved our Drupal installation when we began this series. Apache lets us override this index page by supplying an index file. Most of the time, it won't actually be there to display a list of files in that directory. We'll actually use it in order to display a web page, for example, or to begin a web application. But it's called index because it's a replacement for this index of files that you see. By default, Apache expects either an index.htm or index.html file, but when we install PHP, it also opens up the possibility of using an index.php file. So that's why we could go to the text adventure directory directly instead of typing in index.php, because Apache sees the index.php and assumes it's the default page for that directory. And so we don't necessarily have to type in the full index.php, but you see that when the page reloaded, we ended up going to index.php because that's where our form was pointing. So if we jump to this text-adventure folder in our examples directory and we expand it, you'll see we have an index.php file here. We also have a set of other files.